Hello, my name is Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Live to 110 podcast. You can learn more about me at my websites, live to110.com and mineralpower.com to learn all about my healing and detox program. You can also watch this video podcast on my YouTube channel, Wendy Live to 110. Today we have my friend Damian Dubé on the podcast, and we talk all about one of my favorite subjects, the thyroid. Him and his wife, Heather Dubé, recently hosted the Thyroid Fat Loss Summit, and I was honored to be a guest and to talk about one of my favorite subjects, how to heal your thyroid naturally. So I talk about my story about how I healed my thyroid, and Damian has, going to talk about how his wife healed her own thyroid, and we talk about all the tips and tricks and things that you need to do to also heal your thyroid naturally. A lot of women out there I know and men are struggling with their thyroid and are being told by their physicians that they have to be on thyroid medication for life. And while that is true for some people, for most people they can heal their thyroid naturally. I can't stress that enough. And we're going to talk about how to do that today on the show. Please keep in mind that this program is only for informational purposes. Please consult your healthcare practitioner before engaging in any treatment that we suggest today on the show. Our guest, Damian Dubé, he and his wife, Heather Dubé, have a website called E3 Energy Evolved. They are both FDNs and co-founders of their website. And their website is a thyroid, adrenal, and metabolic restoration system. That's what their site is all about. And they want to help men and women create their lifetime best natural wellness and metabolism. They discovered their E3 Energy Evolved system during their own battle to successfully beat Heather's advanced Hashimoto's thyroiditis, chronic fatigue, and autoimmune disease. And they did this through nutrition, lifestyle, and environmental change to transform her body in only 2 years to compete as a U.S. national level athlete. And with 50 years of education and experience in nutrition, wellness, psychology, athletics, and pharmacy between them, they are diagnostic functional nutritionists, athletes and coaches, expert contributors for magazines like Experience Life magazine and On Fitness magazine, and they're also nutrition science peer reviewers. Damian, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Wendy. I really appreciate it.
Well, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your story of, how you healed yourselves, you and your wife Heather, and your issues with chronic fatigue and other health issues that you guys were having.
Yeah, so back in around '06, '07, we were living in California. We had a tremendous amount of extremely stressful events in a short period of time. We had recently got married. Wedding was back in New York, New Jersey. So, I mean, Heather was planning that overseas across country while she was, working in marketing communications 60, 70 hours a week. And then, my father had gotten diagnosed with esophageal cancer. I think, like yours, right?
Yeah, my father passed away from that as well.
Yeah. So that was a little traumatizing. We had a couple of job losses, and then we relocated, moved, and literally closed in like 20 days and had to move and everything like that. I mean, it was just a lot of stuff occurring all at once. In addition to that, we were living in the Sacramento Valley, which is kind of like a pool of pesticides, so there's a lot of agriculture there. Heather was working in the agriculture business doing marketing communications for some of the largest agri companies in the country. And all of a sudden, she just started to not feel well. She started to get really bad allergies, really fatigued, and she was going to doctor after doctor, and everybody was just saying basically, oh, it's nothing, it's allergies, it's in your head, you're imagining this, and so on and so forth. And to the point where she got, she actually couldn't even physically get out of bed. She had to leave her job, and her face literally had ballooned up. She had so much inflammation. She didn't look like anybody in these doctors' offices yet. They're telling her that everything's fine, she's normal, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So Heather's kind of a bulldog, from Jersey. So she doesn't take that as an answer, So she did a lot of research on her own, and we ended up finding a practitioner that helped us to kind of piece things together a little bit. For at least he made sense to us, you know. So we had actually flown her cross country for almost 2 weeks, and she spent 2 weeks in this gentleman's office, which was extremely costly, you know. And this is a time when the economy kind of was tanking, and I had actually lost my job as well, and so we were living on credit too, right? So the American dream. You know, so this doctor made sense. He was a chiropractor, and he ran some tests and determined that she had Hashimoto's. She tested positive for lupus. She had chronic fatigue. She had really bad eczema and candida, and a slew of other autoimmune conditions. And over the course of the next year and a half to 2 years, we healed her naturally to the point where she went back to competing at a national level in figure bodybuilding. You know, so that's when we started to kind of shift our mindset and around health. You know, we were always into athletics, but now we're taking that athletic background and shifting it more into the healing. And what we found through her healing process is that she not only was healing all these things, but by the shifts I was making in my nutrition, I was no longer lactose intolerant. I was no longer got athlete's foot and things like that. Heather's yeast infections went away. You know, her migraines went away. Her, you know, all these other things that most people think is kind of normal just went away.
Yeah.
You know, so that, as I was saying, that's kind of what sparked us to go back and further our education and become diagnostic and functional nutritionists. And then we took that plus all of our experience, of course, across the lifespan, and created E3 Energy Evolved in our system. And really the purpose for this is to pay it forward to other women who are suffering from all these different conditions that aren't getting the answers from the doctor, feeling hopeless, like there's, you know, they're just stuck in a rut and they can't get out of it, you know. So we want to pay it forward and really show them that there is a way to get out of it. The medical system is not looking at it correctly. They're not looking at it in an all-encompassing manner, and they're really doing a disservice to these women that are suffering from, you know, autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, chronic fatigue, and so on.
Yeah, and you just recently hosted the Thyroid Fat Loss Summit, correct?
Yeah.
I was a guest speaker on the summit, and so why don't you talk a little bit about that and why you wanted to host this kind of large summit to teach women about how to heal their thyroid naturally?
So one thing that kind of sparked that was we have a little bit different mindset. We both come from the athletic and competition industries, right? And we don't really care too much for those industries and some of the negatives that kind of go along with it, like the hardcore dieting. Sometimes some people are even using drugs. Some women are even, you know, using drugs prescribed by their coaches, right? And it's kind of caused a detriment to their health, you know, and this whole metabolic disorder, metabolic syndrome, or whatever. So from that stems thyroid problems, autoimmune problems, and fat gain, weight gain, right? So we wanted to kind of go a little bit of a different direction and show that body fat, or, you know, inability to lose weight, is a byproduct of other things that are going on systemically and metabolically within your bodies, you know. So that's why we created a Thyroid Fat Loss Summit, to focus on, you know, a little bit different way of looking at the thyroid and all the different factors that kind of come into play when assessing and treating thyroid conditions, and then also kind of how it plays into your weight gain, you know. So kind of pairing everything together so that you can correct your autoimmune and thyroid problems, Hashimoto's and all that, at the same time losing body fat, you know, without exercise, without over dieting, without all these other things that become industry normals.
Yeah. So many women that are struggling with their thyroid disease also struggle with weight gain, you know, no matter what they do. And I see this in my client population, and I struggle with this myself when I had my own thyroid issues that were as yet undiagnosed. And what do I have to do? I was working out 8 hours a week. I would have been an Olympiad, you know, if I'd done that in my 20s. Like, what's going on? So what would you say to them that their doctors are missing?
So, one thing we like to say is that you're not sick because you're fat. You're fat because you're sick. And I hate to use that term fat, right? But basically, what we're trying to say is that body fat storage is a byproduct of poor health, right? And the industry focuses on eating less and exercising more. And what we're trying to say is that's not the solution, and that's going to actually create more stress within the body. And then when you look at really bodily function, stress is the biggest cause of all kinds of different issues, right? And we all think of stress as mental stress, jobs, relationships, economy, finances, and so on and so forth. But there are other forms of stress as well, right? So you got your toxins, toxic exposure from the cosmetics you're applying to your body, the cleaning supplies in your house, the carpet is extremely toxic. All your furniture that's got fire retardants on it are all extremely toxic to the endocrine system, to the liver, and so on. But then we also have to look at exercise. Exercise is a form of stress. Dieting is a form of stress, right? So when you're kind of tapped out stress-wise, and your adrenal glands are already depleted, and then you increase that exercise, you're just kind of further spiraling into that metabolic syndrome, so to speak. So the solution of exercise more and eat less is completely backwards. We've had women come to us and their doctor said, well, you need to exercise more and eat less. And they say, well, I'm not cheating on my diet. I'm doing everything as I'm supposed to do. And then the doctor says, you're lying.
Yeah.
And then she breaks down in tears, right? Because she's in front of her husband. Her doctor's telling her she's lying. She has to be cheating. Well, it's not that she has to be cheating. It's that the doctors don't understand the stress and adaptation that's involved.
I'm the poster child for that, of trying to push myself to try to lose weight, because I've always been a very thin person, thinner than average, so to speak.
Yeah.
And after I had my baby, that's when a lot of women, their thyroid and adrenals tank after that, because they're so mineral deficient. The babies just suck everything out of them, and they just really, any pre-existing health issue they had really come to fruition after they have a child. And I was doing the same thing. I was working out 6 to 8 hours a week. I was going to bed hungry every night. I was doing the prescription that you read about in all the books: eat more, or eat less and exercise more.
Right.
And it wasn't working. And I have so many women coming to me, and it's heartbreaking. They're just killing themselves trying to lose weight. And what I had to do and accept was that I decided that I wasn't going to worry about my weight. And if you guys watch my cooking show, you can see I was pretty pudgy there for a little while. Because I chose my health over vanity and looking good. And I decided to take, 3 years where I was not really exercising. I was exercising very mildly, about twice a week, and just focusing on sleeping and resting and de-stressing, meditation, supplementation, detoxification, and food sensitivities, sussing out what those were, and doing all these little known causes of weight gain I was addressing. And after healing my body for 2 to 3 years, then now I am back to exercising, 4 or 5 times a week, because I can handle it now. My thyroid adrenals are healed. Now my body can handle that stress. And I've been able to lose, 20 pounds in the last several months.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great, but it was a long road, and there's no shortcuts to healing. So I just wanted to tell my own personal story for a lot of women out there. Sometimes you just kind of have to accept a little weight gain for a while before you can get to where you want to go weight-wise.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because as a man, me saying that, coming from a man, right, women are going to say, well, what do you know? You don't understand. But you hit on a big thing, is letting the weight go mentally, and if you're focusing on the weight, that is an additional stress, and it's never going to go away. So you need to let that go, and like you said, rest. Let your body repair. When you're expending all this energy exercising, whether it's HIIT training, CrossFit, marathon running, so on and so forth, or even heavy weight training, you're detracting from your body's ability to repair itself. It needs all its energy to focus on repairing and basically not dying. So now you add this additional demand onto your body's systems, and it just freaks out. It just can't. It can't repair, and you're never going to lose that weight.
Yeah, you have to spend some time, a good amount of time, healing your endocrine system, your adrenals and thyroid, your hormonal systems, before you can really get to the weight you want to be at. And a lot of women don't want to hear that. I lose quite a few clients by women coming to me that want to lose weight. And I'm like, it's going to take you a few years, and they don't want to hear that. They want a quick fix, and it doesn't work that way.
There are ways to speed it up if you're super aggressive, but. Yeah, the reality is that, if you're 30 or 40 years old, you still got another 40 or 50 years left, right? What is a year or 18 months out of that 40 years? I mean, it's a fraction, So if you just give your body a little bit of time, and I'm not saying don't exercise for a year and a half, but maybe it's going to take you 4 or 5, 6 months of no exercise to just allow your body to restore itself while doing all these other things that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Detoxification, sleeping, nutrients, supplements, so on.
Yeah, gut healing and figuring out your food sensitivities and avoiding dairy and gluten and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and those are definitely some big points that we definitely want to touch on.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned, when you were a lot of this was kind of rebounding after giving birth, and what we have to understand too is that a lot of the causes of Hashimoto's and thyroid problems are kind of congenital. They're stemming from preconception. So when your mom is depleted nutritionally, right, you as an offspring are also going to be depleted nutritionally, and then the other thing with that is prenatal care. Prenatal care is done incorrectly, and it started way too late. Most cultures, some cultures, I should say, start prenatal care in the teenage years, where they start to focus on nutrition and rest and, that type of thing. We focus on it once you conceive, right? And at that point, it's almost too late. And in addition to that, when the doctor's saying, well, you need to take this prenatal multivitamin that's loaded with copper, right? Yes, your needs for copper as a new, as an expecting mother are increased, but your absorption of copper is also increased, right? So you don't necessarily need to add more copper. I know you talk about copper quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing too, right? So if you're adding additional copper that your body's going to absorb more, it's also going to deposit more. And a lot of times that will be deposited in your thyroid, which will affect your thyroid function.
Yeah, I became very copper toxic following my pregnancy because I did the prenatal vitamins with, I think they had 4 milligrams of copper in them. And I that's why women become Looney Tunes, after they give birth, because they have so much copper and it causes mood disturbances, anxiety, depression. It's not postpartum as much as it's copper toxicity induced by prenatal vitamins.
Yeah, and it also is linked to PCOS, fibroids, ovarian cysts, all these other things that women experience in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And then on top of that, it's depleting zinc, right? So it's going to start to displace zinc, which is an anti-stress mineral, which we talked about earlier, right? When you're stressed, your body's going to use zinc stores. Now, when you're displacing that zinc, you don't have enough zinc to deal with your stress.
Yeah.
Which is essential for certain enzymes, that are required for different functions within the body.
Well, why don't we talk about some of the major underlying factors that cause hypothyroidism and even Hashimoto's, the autoimmune thyroid?
Yeah, so we talked about copper, right? But some others are you touched on before, food sensitivities, right? So, and I think this is a big problem with a lot of diets, so to speak, right? Everybody's on a different diet. You have your autoimmune paleo, you have your whatever vegetarian, you have all these different things. And problem is that when your immune system is compromised for whatever reason, your body, as you're eating these foods, your gut lining starts, or your mucosal lining starts to become a little bit overly permeable, and some of these undigested foods are starting to seep through into your blood, which then your immune system starts attacking, right? So you might be eating broccoli, right, which is a healthy food, but your immune system may say, this isn't supposed to be here, I'm going to attack it, right? which then creates further immune issues, further toxicity issues that your liver has to kind of pick up, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But then also, those undigested protein strands or amino acid strands, some of them actually resemble the proteins that are in the thyroid, right? So when you're eating a food that your body is having trouble with and your immune system attacks it, and then it sees some of the proteins in your thyroid that look very similar, it says, hey, this looks like that food, I'm going to attack it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden your TPOs go up, right? And now you have Hashimoto's. So I mean that's a big thing. So finding out what you're actually sensitive to and eliminating those foods can definitely help.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to do a food elimination diet. I've tried doing them and not so successful because you have to be so disciplined to do those. So I prefer people do a blood food sensitivity test, like an MRT or ELISA. I personally do the MRT, and
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just there's no way you can do a food elimination diet for 150 foods, which the MRT does. Yeah. And it just makes it so much easier. Like I had one client, she was sensitive to beef, really off the charts sensitive to beef, almonds and cacao, which she was eating every single day. And taking out those foods made such a huge difference in her life and how she felt, and inflammation and weight gain. You're going to gain weight if you're eating foods that you're sensitive to because they promote inflammation. In addition to aggravating other health conditions, and food sensitivities mimic pain syndromes and so many other health conditions. So it's just really an invaluable part of anyone's treatment protocol per se.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, another issue that I find is your bowel terrain, right? So your intestinal, when your immune system is compromised and like a parasite or something like that, or a fungus or bacteria is introduced into your system, your immune system has trouble fighting it off, and then it starts to kind of take over your intestines, right? And those different things start to emit certain toxins, endotoxins, and yeast is a big one. Yeast will actually hormone mask. So the endotoxins from yeast not only feed the different bacterias, but also kind of attach to cell receptor sites. So when your cell receptor sees this endotoxin, it thinks that it's the thyroid hormone, right? Because it's attaching to that receptor. And all of a sudden your thyroid says, okay, well, my cells are getting enough hormone. I'm going to stop production or slow production down because I don't need to produce anymore. Meanwhile, you got severe hypothyroid symptoms, and then your doctor looks at your thyroid and says either it's normal or it's not functioning. Let's give you some thyroid meds. Well, if you're taking thyroid meds and increasing your thyroid hormone, but it's not making it to the cells because they're clogged up, it doesn't matter. Your body's going to send back that negative feedback loop and say, stop production. So I mean that's a big one as well. And as this stuff grows, it starts to take over your entire intestinal tract. And starts to create that dysbiosis we hear of, which is an imbalance in friendly versus unfriendly bacteria and flora. And that's going to affect your function of everything. I mean, and then your liver has to pick up the slack again. Yeah. So then your liver gets overwhelmed, and your liver is very essential in thyroid function.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, about how important proper liver functioning is in thyroid function and how that directly affects your ability of your thyroid to be healthy.
Yeah, so the liver is your primary detoxification organ, right? So anytime toxins are introduced into the body, your liver has to deal with it, and through that process, it's using up a lot of different nutrients essential for detoxification, like selenium, like glutathione. So as these minerals nutrients are being depleted, it then kind of stems into other areas, like the thyroid, right? Because the thyroid also needs selenium. It also needs glutathione for proper function. So when these minerals are being depleted, then your thyroid is going to have trouble not only producing T4, but converting that T4 to T3, which selenium assists with. The glutathione, basically, think how to put this. So there's an enzyme called thyroid peroxidase, right, or TPO, which when that is combined with hydrogen peroxide, that helps convert iodide to iodine, which your body needs for your thyroid hormone production. And then the byproduct of that is additional hydrogen peroxide is kind of left over, and the glutathione helps to remove that excess hydrogen peroxide. So when your glutathione stores are depleted, which if your liver is overly worked, they are, your body doesn't have enough glutathione to remove that excess hydrogen peroxide, and all of a sudden you have Hashimoto's, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then your TPO start to go up. So I mean that's a big factor when it comes to Hashimoto's and thyroid health.
Yeah, I think also when your liver's not functioning properly, you're not able to metabolize excess estrogen. And when you have too much estrogen floating around, it binds to your thyroid hormones and prevents it from getting into your cells.
Yep.
And so that's another big problem that women have, especially if they're taking hormone replacement therapy or birth control pills or any kind of hormonal birth control. That also causes their copper to go up because estrogen levels correlate with copper levels. So causes a multitude of problems, not to mention the xenoestrogens, all the estrogenic chemicals, perfumes that you ladies are wearing.
Cosmetics.
Those are estrogenic, and all the phthalates and parabens and preservatives in the conventional store-bought shampoos. Pesticides, if you're not eating organic, so many estrogenic chemicals in the environment that interfere in thyroid function.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Even when you're looking at like your water, or if you go to a dentist,
Mm-hmm.
The chlorine that's added to your water is going to block or basically block your iodine from your thyroid, right? It's going to just replace the iodine. You got the fluoride that your dentists are telling you for years since you were a child. You need fluoride to prevent tooth decay.
Yeah.
Well, that's also going to block iodine and thyroid production. You got bromine and bromide in breads, which ironically they used to use iodine in bread when baking, but the government came in and said, oh, we need to replace iodine with bromide because we're afraid that people are going to become iodine toxic, right? So to replace bromide, or replace the iodine with bromide, and bromide clogs your thyroid and prevents iodine uptake, So, I mean, to me, that's just insane.
Yeah, and bromine is also in like jacuzzi chemicals. If people aren't using chlorine, the other option is bromine. It does the similar job. So if people are, I use bromine in my jacuzzi. I never go in my jacuzzi, but I do use that to clean it, as well as other ways to clean it as well. But there's people that are swimming in pools and on a regular basis, or going in jacuzzis, are getting a nice dose of bromine and chlorine.
Yeah, and I know when we talked to Dr. O'Brien, he was talking about how, let's say you're in a hotel, you open the elevator, and all of a sudden you're on the pool level, and you just get this waft of chlorine, and when you're really that sensitive to it, that's an indication that you have a lot of chlorine in your body, and it's blocking your thyroid.
Yeah. Yeah, and people's drinking water, I think a lot of people don't realize there are, municipal water sources add so many crazy things to water that it's not always reported. They are chlorine, bromine, aluminum, copper. Copper's a fungicide. Aluminum makes sediment sink to the bottom. So many chemicals in the water, and people are using a Brita filter. It's insane. That's not getting anything out of your water.
No. Fluoride too is another one they add.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And something else you touched on earlier was some of the medications people are taking, right? So that's another thing that's kind of overlooked in the industry. Every medication, drug-wise, depletes the body of essential nutrients, right? So you touched on your hormone replacements, HRTs, which I got the list here, so I'm gonna have to refer to it.
Yeah.
But so your hormone replacers are gonna replace not only magnesium but vitamin B6 and zinc, right? B6, which is essential for thyroid function and anti-stress, as well as zinc, which is essential for both. Your oral contraceptives are, which every doctor, every OBGYN is telling their patients, you need to be on birth control pills. If you're not, your risk for cancer goes up, which is a load of garbage.
Yeah.
It's actually the opposite. But your oral contraceptives will deplete vitamin B2, B6, B12, vitamin C, which is also needed for adrenal function, tyrosine, which is needed for thyroid function, as well as zinc. Your corticosteroids, your like prednisone and things like that, deplete calcium, vitamin C and D, selenium, potassium, sodium, which are also anti-stress minerals. Antibiotics are just wreaking havoc on your intestinal lining, which we talked about before, with your, creating dysbiosis, as well as depleting all your B vitamins, which again, anti-stress. So I mean, there's all these drugs that are being prescribed to everybody, whether it's over the counter or prescription, are just making the problem worse. They're not really helping the problem. I'm not saying if you're on medications, go off them, right? Legally, I cannot tell you to do that, right? But do some research. Figure out what your body really needs, and if there are ways to maybe gradually go off these medications under your doctor's guidance.
Yeah, and I was on thyroid medication when I first started having thyroid symptoms, and I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I went to my naturopath, and she, diagnosed me as having very low thyroid hormones, and the hormones estrogen of a menopausal woman, which was very uplifting to my self-esteem at 37. Sure.
Sure.
She put me on thyroid medication, and I took it gladly, felt better. But then I found hair mineral analysis and began balancing my minerals and feeling better. And then once I felt strong enough, and confident enough, then I stopped my thyroid medication. And definitely there was an adjustment period of a couple months because I feel that taking supplemental thyroid hormones interferes in your thyroid being able to heal completely. Whatever it is, that doesn't mean get off your thyroid medication. It just means when you're on a corrective program, at some point you may want to consider, in conjunction with your doctor, maybe removing that, because when you take supplemental thyroid hormones, it downregulates your natural production of hormones, and that interferes in the HPA axis communication, so it makes it difficult for your body to begin producing them on its own. And so that's something to consider. It also depends on how long. Everyone's different, but some people that have long-standing Hashimoto's may have too much tissue destroyed to go off their thyroid medication. So everyone's a little bit different in that. So it's definitely something you want to think about when on a thyroid healing protocol and working with your team, your health coaching team.
Yeah, and the reality is that if your body is not producing the thyroid hormone and you feel like garbage because of it, then adding in some supplemental hormone for a period of time might be a good idea, right?
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Still make you feel better, right?
Yeah.
But while you're starting to feel better, you really need to address the root causes, which is some of the things we were talking about earlier, right? And then as you're addressing those, maybe you can come down off the hormone a little bit.
Yeah,
I like my clients.
Yeah, I tell my clients at least a year, because it takes natural means take a long time. They don't happen in 6 months. So you do. I think it's good while you're rebuilding up your body to stay on your thyroid meds, just so that you feel good, because then you'll hate your practitioner.
Yeah, exactly.
You feel depressed and fat, and then then you're not going to stay on the program because you don't feel good. Like, why am I doing this?
Right. And you touched on a good point. We didn't get to this point in 6 months. We're not going to get back in 6 months. But the great thing is that the trip back in most cases is a lot quicker than what how long it took you to get to this point.
Yeah.
So the body just has this innate ability to heal and repair. If given the proper tools.
Yeah. So let's talk about diet a little bit.
Yeah.
So many women think that they're going to correct their Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, by just eating a gluten-free diet or dairy-free diet or paleo or autoimmune paleo and other, type diets. So why is that not enough?
We kind of touched on it a little bit before, right, when we were talking about food sensitivities. So, I think some of these diets are probably, it's a good start, right? I think everybody probably should go gluten-free because of gluten's effect on the thyroid and how it's kind of related to Hashimoto's. So I think everybody should do gluten-free. But when we're looking at some of these other diets, like the AIP diet, yeah, I mean, it can help a little bit, but if some of those foods that are on that AIP diet, your body is reacting negatively to, or your immune system is attacking, then that's not going to fix the problem, and you're going to continue to eat these foods. You might feel better for a period of time, but then all of a sudden you're going to start to create further issues, with food sensitivities and further toxicity issues and further erosion of that mucosal lining of the intestinal tract. So, it really needs to be more bio-individualized. So generalized approaches just, they don't work, which is why people are going from diet to diet to diet to diet, looking for that, golden egg, right? But when you take a truly individualized approach and you're running the right labs at the same time, looking at the inside of the body and what's functioning and what's not functioning, you can create a better program to really truly heal your imbalances and restore your body function.
Yeah, I agree. You have to have a more individualized approach to diet, and that's why I created my modern paleo diet, because paleo is a good base. But you need to
sure.
venture. It's a good template you can venture forth from, but there's no one diet for everyone. Nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
That they have to do this constant goose chase to figure out what works for them, and then it's always changing as their body heals. They can incorporate more foods, but it's worth exploring for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at high protein, high carb, high fat, low protein, low carb, low fat, all these different. I mean, really, it depends on where you are in your current health. You might be at a point right now today where you need higher protein, higher fat. And then you might be at a point 6 months from now, as things start to shift a little bit, where you need to reduce that fat just a little bit. Maybe keep your protein up, but at the end of the day, we also need more veggies.
Yeah.
Another issue I have is the whole raw food kick. Where if you're in a healing crisis, sometimes too many raw foods are not a good idea either, because it just takes more work for your digestive system to break down.
I agree.
That work, correlates to additional stress, which we're not going to beat that one anymore.
Yeah, I know most people's digestive systems are such a wreck, especially with my client population. Very few people have good digestion, and they can't digest the raw foods.
No.
I don't care what some of the raw foodists say, how great it is. It doesn't
Enzymes
matter if you can't digest it. So let's talk a little bit about your E3 Energy Evolved system as it pertains to healing the thyroid naturally.
Yeah, so one of the things that we learned coming out of Heather's illness was we kind of took what we learned from that, plus what we learned through our mentoring with Olympic coaches. One of our mentors is a PhD in nutrient biochemistry or nutrient whatever, I don't even know, something you can't pronounce. But basically, we kind of took all this stuff and then created our system. And what we're doing is we're looking at the different factors that affect really overall health. Thyroid is just a byproduct, and those factors are basically there's three pieces to our system. Which is kind of how we came with the name E3 Energy Evolved. So there's energy in, energy out, and energy environment. Energy in being what we're taking in, the nutrients, the food we're taking in. Energy out being detoxification, exercise, expenditure. Energy environment being just everything that's around us, in our homes, in our workplace, in the soil that's producing our food. All these different things. And when you take all these things together, that's really kind of how you individualize the approach, for each person.
Yeah, and so I have a question that I like to ask all of my guests. What do you think is the most pressing health issue in the world today?
That's a tough one, because I think that most issues are kind of they're
There's so many of them. I know.
There's so many.
It's hard to decide.
I think autoimmune disease is a big one, because I think everybody is immune depleted. I think vaccines are making our immune systems weaker, right? not to mention the mercury and the formaldehyde and all these other toxins that are in them. And when your immune system is compromised, that's when everything else just kind of starts to snowball, and that's when you get your Hashimoto's, your thyroid problems, your really anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I wrote an article on how vaccines cause chronic immune system dysregulation, and it was really a labor of love because I feel like my own daughter was injured by vaccines. And I think one of the reasons why we have such a huge crisis in autoimmune issues and cancer and other diseases that are a result of poor immune functioning or overreactive immune systems, allergies, asthma, etc., is in part due to vaccinations, and especially the insane vaccine schedule that we have today of 36 to 42 vaccines by 6 years old. And I think we're going to see a larger rash of immune system induced illnesses as a result of that.
Yeah, it's really scary. The whole political scene behind it is extremely scary. They've been lying to these vaccines for years. Detrimental.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's starting to come out, and the people that are exposing it are starting to drop off.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, which I'm not going to talk about.
No.
I don't want to drop off.
Yeah. Yeah, me neither. I know there's a lot of stories in the news right now about how a lot of natural health practitioners are being murdered. There's this huge rash of them. We won't get into that, but I think it's very telling the lengths the government, FDA, and other powers that be will go to protect the billions of dollars they make with medications and medical testing equipment, etc.
They're uncovering some of these lies, and they're paying the ultimate price for uncovering those lies right now.
Yeah. I know my husband, he's invested in a company that, she's like 25% owner in a company that this medical device company that scans you. It scans your body very quickly and knows instantly what's wrong with you. It knows everything that's wrong with you. And the inventor of it is afraid he's going to be killed. So we can't reveal his name or anything, but they're going to take it into China because it will never be accepted here. So I think it's unfortunate. There's a lot of suppression of medical freedom, and there's a lot of companies that are forced to go into Europe or other countries. And so I think we're going to find that our kind of stronghold on medical advancement and medical technologies is suffering because the powers that be want to keep their money-making agendas in place here and squeezing out alternative methods that work better, that are cheaper. So that's my 2 cents.
You got lobbyists, right, that are in the ear of all the government officials, right? And these people are taking donations from different groups, and those people giving the donations are deciding our fate, right? And it's the machine.
Yeah.
And that's what the fight is against. The fight right now is against the machine.
Yeah. And I love that, the work that you and your wife, Heather, are doing. And
likewise.
And all the other health practitioners and crusaders out there, they're trying to get the word out that there's another way, that you can heal your body. You don't have to be on medications for life. You just have to very simply and elegantly give your body the space to heal. And there's lots of different ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Wendy.
Yeah, so listeners, if you want to learn all about detoxification and how to heal your health conditions naturally and how to detox properly, you can go to my website, live110.com, and you can learn all about my healing and detox program at mineralpower.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Live to 110 podcast.
All right, thanks, Wendy.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Wendy. It's great to be here.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and about your practice?
So I have a clinic here in Austin, Texas, and I say 80 to 90% of the patients that I see are worldwide. Patients last week from Saudi Arabia and Europe and Italy and Australia, New Zealand. And with technology, we're able to do lab work and create programs and work with people worldwide, which is great. And typically we're dealing a lot with hormonal related issues, thyroid issues, and chronic GI issues too.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I had the same thing. I see patients or clients from all over the world, and just really very enriching and very satisfying to be able to help so many people wherever they are in the
Yeah.
world. So you're a chiropractor, correct?
Yeah, my doctorate's in chiropractic medicine, and I've been, say, about the last 5 or 10 years, really specialized more in functional medicine, especially the areas of the thyroid, adrenals, and chronic gut issues.
Okay. And so why don't you tell the listeners, if anyone's green out there,
Yeah.
what is the thyroid and what are its functions in the body? So let's just cover some basics.
So thyroid is kind of part of the hormonal system. It's like our thermostat of our body, if you will. It helps control metabolism. Basically, every cell in our body needs a healthy level of metabolism to function. It's what allows us to break down food, create energy, create heat, move, etc. And thyroid is an important piece. And the thyroid and the adrenal glands are kind of like a back and forth, kind of a brother and sister, if you will. The adrenals help manage stress and produce stress hormones that also help us deal with inflammation, produce sex hormones, which help us heal and be able to reproduce and be vital and healthy and young. And the thyroid gland produces this hormone called T4, which then gets converted a couple places throughout the body into T3, which is really our master thyroid hormone. Most people in the conventional world, when they talk about thyroid, they're really talking about TSH, which is a brain hormone. So when we talk about thyroid, we're referring to active T3 thyroid hormone, not just T4 or TSH.
Yeah. And so what are some of the myopias in the typical testing that doctors do? Because I have so many clients, they come to me, hey, look at my medical test, and the doctor has only tested TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. What is the
Yeah.
problem with only testing that one value?
So TSH, like we talked about, is a pituitary hormone. So like kind of right behind the middle of your eyes there. And we have technology today where we can actually look at the actual thyroid hormone levels, inactive T4 or T3, which is your more active, about 400% more active. So 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, we were primarily diagnosing thyroid issues via TSH testing. And now in the last 50 years, we can actually look at the thyroid numbers on a one-by-one basis. So we kind of are at an antiquated level of diagnosing